all of us live inside of a story that we tell ourselves. Change is what most people struggle with, myself included. The illusion, as we've heard many times, the illusion of communication is that it happens. So a CEO or executive may believe they have clarified direction, where we're going, how it's measured, what it looks like going forward, what it looks like when we get there. And then you ask the individual to receive that information and you hear something different.
How do you make sure it's clear and being received in the way you intended it for the other side?
Because we all receive information based on where we are, not where the executive is.
Welcome back to the Little Wonder Podcast. Super excited for our guest today. I have James McPartland on the show. James Mac, and we're going to go by Mac. I've been grandfathered in, I'm told. So Mac, welcome to the show.
It is a pleasure, Jason. Thank you for having me, my friend.
Excited to have you. A little bit about Mac. He's a keynote speaker, author of the Unopened Gifts series, and MindShift Performance Coach. For over 25 years, he's been helping leaders and their teams access breakthrough performance results. He's worked with organizations such as Bank of America, IBM, Nespresso, Kellogg's, Dow Chemical, Athletes First, 24-Hour Fitness. I mean, you get it. He's worked with all the top players here to transform their cultures into one exceptional collaboration and achievement. Max, super excited, man. So when you go into these companies, right, and you're into a company who's maybe uncertain on their path forward, right? They've had their brand awareness or their identity for years, right? And they're looking to make a shift. They're looking to upgrade with the times. How do you help them transform, right? To spotlight where they've been, but also where they're looking to go?
Yeah, look, Jason, thank you. I appreciate the question and I appreciate the introduction. It's interesting. From my perspective and my experience, all of us live inside of a story that we tell ourselves. And when I'm asked to come into an organization, there's likely a challenge. And I don't know any organization that doesn't face one. Your success would tell me that you've overcome some obstacles. And often what happens in my experience is something shows up in an organization. There are multiple stories of the C-suite about where we're going, what we're trying to get to. And the gap is communication. The illusion, as we've heard many times, the illusion of communication is that it happens. So a CEO or executive may believe they have clarified direction, where we're going, how it's measured, what it looks like going forward, what it looks like when we get there. And then you ask the individual to receive that information and you hear something different. Because we all receive information based on where we are, not where the executive is. So I seek to clarify the communication and maybe codify one story to get the path forward.
That's a great topic here, is that when you think about yourself providing a message, how do you make sure it's clear and being received in the way you intended it for the other side?
Yeah, it's amazing to me. One of the outcomes, maybe unintended, but benefit nonetheless, of the work we do is helping people recapture, let's say, margin, by virtue of taking a look at, if they're willing to do it, the cost of miscommunication in an organization. And there's lots of research and lots of studies around what it costs an organization when there is inefficient communication systems. What we like to do is say to people, look, all we want to do is enhance something you already do. You communicate all the time. In the process, if people are process oriented, is we're given permission to take a look at a payroll cost, whether it's in a department or in the entire company. We go through an assessment with the employer and the employees, and we ask them how much time they're spending in meeting, how much repeat performance work are they doing, how much follow-up are they doing, how much are they chasing people, how many commitments are not met. And not to judge it, but to say, okay, take a look at this. If you put a cost around this, you'll see that this inefficiency is costing you an enormous amount of money, or you could recapture some of your bottom line or build your bottom line. So we take a look at that, because what I think your simple question was, how do you know? And look, most things are simple, but not easy. The pause to ask the question, what did you hear me say? And then look at the difference between what is an acknowledgement and an agreement. It's very common in our lives where we have a conversation with somebody, they may be head nodding, and maybe they give us some feedback, if you will. And there's acknowledgement, but there's not necessarily an agreement. Yeah, I heard you, but I didn't promise I was going to do anything. And two people can leave a room with different beliefs about what's the next step. And often they're different.
So when someone brings you into an organization, right, there might be some wall resistance that you face, mainly because people are used to a certain system, right? Maybe they've been there decade. And now they're coming in and being offered a way forward that potentially, I saw this in my family business at the time. We're trying to help my dad transform into just some of the easier ways that we would see it here. But the way we've always done it seems to be the easier way. How do you overcome resistance when you come into a company, when you're brought in by one party to help transition or transform another party into a new identity?
Yeah, resistance is a common phenomena in all human beings. Change is the most difficult thing I think any of us would go through, at least in North America. What is it? January 17th is National Quit Day for resolutions, right? I'm tired because willpower is a finite resource. Also, if I come in, nobody wants to be assessed as doing something wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong. And so the thing that we focus on, or I focus on, is you have probably heard many times in your life, I imagine your viewers and listeners have heard the same, is, hey, look, it's not personal, it's business. My belief, if you're a person, it's all personal. How could it not be? I don't think you just, okay, I'm just going to leave it at the door. Part of your life and what happens outside of business greatly affects what happens inside of business. To put it simply, which is the hardest thing to do, is it's identifying what it is for the human being. Where are you trying to take your life? Take me to the future. Let's get in a helicopter, fly up, take me out 12, 18, 24 months. What does it look like? Let's land the helicopter. And I'm talking about performance metrics at the moment. I'm talking about what do you want for your life? Because work is often the vehicle to take you from where you are to where you want to go. Most people who join an organization probably don't make a lifetime commitment to it. There's a period of time. So the question is how to align personal values and goals so that I see the vehicle of work taking me from where I am to where I want to go. Therefore, it's easier for me to become aligned with the business objectives if I believe it's consistent with where I want to go. So to simplify your question, it's personal. If somebody doesn't see what's in it for them, which is the radio station we're all tuned into, or the podcast, they might head nod, but not much is going to happen, and you end up having to chase people if they don't see what's in it for them.
Yeah, it's great. Ideally, many times in life, we miss that point, is that you always have to look at the benefit of the other party, right? You see that in any transactional level, any negotiation, right? You always miss that, what's in it for us, right? But we forget that there's a human being on the other side of the equation here that we're basically cutting out, right? 'Cause we're only thinking about our drivers and our motivation. When you look at your life, right, and you had times when you faced resistance, or times potentially where it was just easier to quit and just give up, right, instead of just making the change that was justified. What's something of an example that you've done to transition or to use this into your own life on a daily basis?
Yeah, hey, that is what happens on a daily basis, Jason, because look, you could ask me a question that I might struggle with. And what I've had to learn over time is anywhere I'm resisting something, much like going to the gym, resistance is only going to make that muscle stronger. What I have learned over time, at least I've learned, or maybe I'm continuing to learn, is that what's helpful is if I take 100% responsibility for the outcome of my life. Now, I may not like the results I see, but if I take 100% responsibility, there's always something I can do. If I don't believe there's something I can do, I become a victim. And once I've become a victim, that story I tell myself helps me nail one foot to the floor. And so what is probably more important than anything else, what have I had to do? I've had to create my own sort of scoreboard for life. Where did I think I was going to be at this stage of my life? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, relationships. Give myself probably an unfair assessment, right? Nobody's harder on us than ourselves. And if I look at that and say, okay, dude, this is on you. Anywhere I see myself on that scoreboard, I've co-created the outcome. Now, you might have been in my life and, gee, I wish Jason would do something different. Look, it's hard enough to change me, much less to change you. So I realize there's something I can do. If I'm not responsible for something, I can be responsible to something. You and I are teammates. We're going after something in the business. You're struggling. Your results aren't there. And I could say, well, look, that's not my responsibility. Hey, baloney, if we're teammates, look, Jason, dude, what's up, man? You said you wanted this. This is getting in the way. I've got this book. Here's a cup of coffee. There's something I can do all the time. And action cures anxiety. I always feel better when I'm moving forward. So I guess the ultimate answer to your question is I face resistance all the time. Change is what most people struggle with, myself included. And so what I have to look at, anytime I feel the pressure or feel offended, there's something I'm supposed to learn. If I can keep that mentality, there's always something to learn, man.
The Stoic philosophy, you can control how you act and how you react in many fashions of life. When you look at, if there's a listener today, and potentially this goes for an organization too, right? If the belief system is compromised, and that's part of the daily struggle, is just believing that they can do it. Many times, that's the first part that goes, right? We lose our belief, we lose our ability to dream, our ability to think outside of what is our reality. Is there a couple questions we can ask ourselves to ground ourselves, to give us a new beginning or just to open our eyes in a new way?
Yeah, thank you. I think if folks were willing to just test drive this, if it works for them, try it and carry on. If not, discard it. But I think I heard years ago, right? Don't be a follower, be a student. But what I've seen consistently, if folks would recognize that they're starring in their own movie, you're starring in yours today. I just happen to be a walk-on to your set. And for the most part, each and every day, I sort of write a script. Even if I don't physically do it, I do it mentally and emotionally with a story about how life is going to unfold and how the players in my life are going to participate. And they seldom disappoint me. And if I recognize I've got the power of the pen to rewrite that script, that gives me energy, it gives me agency, it gives me a sense of control. And in the work I get to do, and I'm fortunate enough to do, I think if there was one thing people want more of in life, it's a sense of control. So I'll seek to people, say, look, tell me about the movie you're on. Tell me about the movie set. If you're sitting in the theater of your life and you're looking at the screen, let's look at your life. Not to criticize it, but to evaluate it. And where I see most of us get stuck is we have dreams, goals, and aspirations, but we can't see ourselves in that picture. And when we can't see ourselves in that picture, subconsciously we're saying to ourselves, that's not going to happen. January 17th is National Quit Day. Why? Because I really don't see myself in that picture, stronger, fitter, faster, more financially free with a new relationship. So if I don't see it, I can't become it. And it's a series of scripts I like to say to people is, if you've got children or have had children or have been a child, if you've ever stepped on a Lego, you know the power of a Lego. It's small steps at a time. It's stacking the Legos one step at a time. It's the small things. And maybe it's summarized like this, because most of us want these quantum leaps, right? I'm looking at your background, Jason, and I'm seeing what you've accomplished and saying, wow, man, this guy has cracked the code. My guess would be is, no. It may look like that, but let me tell you about the setbacks, the heartaches, the difficulties, the disappointments, and how I had to restack my Legos over time, providing I learned those lessons. So it's the story I tell myself, it's the script I write, it's seeing myself in that screen. And then I would add one other thing. Have somebody walking beside you who's supporting you. Somebody might say, be accountable. Nobody wants to feel bad. We can do that by ourselves. If we struggle, someone's there to lift us up. Come on, dude, this is what you wanted. This is why it's important. Here's what's in it for you. Here's what's in it for your family. And help that person rewrite the script.
It's so easy to look at the view from afar and assume that's better than the view close up. And we find so many times where we're critics of ourselves at such a high level compared to actually, if it was another person, we wouldn't talk to the other person anyway. At the comments we say to that person in our mind, right? We're just so hard on ourselves on a daily basis. It's hard to honestly rebuild ourselves. You find this, you get your accountability, you start to find yourself on the right track, right? What are some questions you're asking yourself, building that daily vision, that daily movie, right? What are some of the biggest questions you should be asking yourself so you can just change the shape of how you're thinking, right? Because the questions I found many times in life, I'm always seeking the answers. And when I uncovered that I wasn't getting the answer because I was really always asking the wrong question, it really started to pull me back, right? Because I want to be, healthy. I want to be, rich. I want to have a great person in my life. I want to have all these different things here. That's what I want. But if I'm not getting that, what's the catalyst that's missing, right? To get me to jump off here. So what suggestions would you have for launching questions?
Yeah, thank you, my friend. Look, the hard one, maybe for most of us, and maybe it's a predominantly male thing. I'm not sure. But I think one of the questions that is reasonable to ask ourselves, maybe in the quiet of our own mind and life, and or with someone we trust, is, what am I afraid of? Because mostly what holds us back is fear. And if I say that what most of us want in life is a level of control, then the things that we want to pursue, we're fearful that maybe we can't. And so if I ask myself, what am I afraid of? And then if I think about, let's use the word, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Hey, welcome to the club. Right? I'm a fail, it's not going to work. I feel I'm going to waste my time. I fear I'm going to get judged. Great, you've identified that. So those could happen. What else could happen? So I ask a person, if you're fearful, got it, here's the things that could go wrong. Tell me something. What else could it mean? If you do succeed one Lego at a time, what's the upside? Who in your life benefits? Not just you, who in your life benefits? Often if I can see who in my life benefits, I'm more apt to do it for them, if it's a spouse, if it's a child, than I am for myself. And serving somebody else is often another way to reduce anxiety. But if I see it bigger for somebody else, it feels less selfish. And also I say to somebody, look, if you do it for somebody else and they know you're doing it and you're working hard and they get the benefit, they're going to say, go for it, man. You do all the work and I get better. Hey, why not? And maybe two other points. Most of us, I would imagine, look, you're asking me to come on your program and you're asking me to be a bit vulnerable by sharing some things in my life. Most of us, from an identity perspective, particularly in the corporate world that I operate in, do not want to show the weakness and the uncertainties and the insecurities because we're paid to perform. But yet there can be two identities, who I am and who I wind up being. What I like to say to people, business cards face down. If there are things you want to get to in your life, it's going to require courage. Jason, what's great about that word courage, it's inspiring, it sells books, it has people watching movies, but courage doesn't feel good. It's hard. And if I'm going to try to be courageous, it's going to be vulnerable. And what's going to happen statistically, there's likelihood of a failure. And I don't want to fail because I'm going to be judged. What's one of the things that we're most fearful of? Other people's opinions. What's the story I'm telling myself? Where do I want to get to? How do those people benefit? And if I see I'm resisting something, I know that's the next step.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Writing down many times, I come up with the 3 fear notion, right? It gets you back to control, which is something you brought up earlier, is that most of our life is that we keep everything in our head. And so we have problems throughout the day. Who doesn't, right? But we treat everything like it's a level 10 problem. If we're late for an appointment or, we just got hit by a car, in our mind, they're both level 10 appointments or level 10 problems, right? Because they're all living in our head. If, we have an email to send or we're running late to this part, like everything always builds up until you put it down, right? You put it down on paper and you put yourself in a hierarchy of just control. You say, okay, these 10 problems aren't real problems, right? Like getting stamps is not a problem, which is something I have to do. But getting this email out to a client that's urgent, that needs to be done by 11 a.m., that's a top priority. The stamps, you can go to number 21 on the list. Let me put this up to number 1 here. And you start to set that in an order of need. You find you start to take back control. And when you start bringing control back to your life, you find things don't get easier, but you're able to problem solve in a way that's advantageous and it starts carrying you forward. And you get out of this stuck loop where all you're doing is facing fires each and every day. And in many organizations, I'm sure you see this too, is that you walk in and they have what's a problem? Well, everything's a problem. It's all fires. The whole day is fires, right? That's all we do is fires. And most of these are just they're just part of business. But because there's no control or no way things are handled, it all feels out of control. So you walk into a lot of big companies, IBM, Nespresso, athletes first. When you walk into that room, what do you do to help them set a new standard, right? To bring up the bar, to understand that they have everything they need. They just need to put it in an order of need.
Yeah, thank you. If it's available to me, what I seek to do is first get time with whomever the individual is that invited me in. And that could be the CEO, the president, or an operating unit leader. If I can get to the person who they themselves decided this is a good thing and seek to understand some of the points that we're making here, who they are, what they're trying to get to. And I'm not going to go really deep up front because I've got to build a relationship. But what I'll share with the individual is some of the points of time of my own journey. I look like yourself, maybe not even as great as yourself, Jason. I can give you the greatest hits and the highlights and some past successes and cash and valuable prizes, which is what people, I guess, they want to hear and see. So I can say, okay, that's there. But let me tell you something to the individual, male or female. Let me tell you where I stubbed my toe, where I've had a setback, where I've got my butt kicked, and what I had to learn along the way. And what I find often is that individuals most likely to let the guard down, and there can be a sense of, wow, you too? Oh, it was just me. So when there's a human factor in it, and then you can put metrics on it for the business performance, and yet I was at one time intimidated by the brands, the marquees on the side of the building. And it's not that's not impressive, but it's all just us. It's just people trying to figure it out, right? Maybe they've got larger titles or larger responsibilities, but there's a level of what am I going to be when I grow up? Outside of the office, there's fears, there's uncertainty, there's children, there's illness, there's financial challenges, there's life. And so if I can build that relationship and say, okay, let's put our uniforms back on and get in the game. And if that can then lead to sort of a similar type conversation with everybody, if the work I do can be viewed as, look, these are life skills, you're going to get better at business if you do the work. However, relationships at home, relationships in the community, relationships with your children, health, well-being, all of that's available. Not here's your personal life and here's your business life. Here's your life. And when people can apply it that way, I think it has much more traction.
That speaks exactly your core message. It's not just business, it's personal. When we stop that, right, it helps us to show up, as you said, build trust, execute with integrity. Mac, thank you everything for coming on the show today. It's super valuable. I think in life, so many times we forget that human need that's available at each and every moment. And we put so much focus just on the task or the execution at hand, thinking everything is transactional in nature. And we just forget that common part is that no matter where you are, it's all having a personal level. That's all that's needed to get back usually to all standing ground in everything from, personal relationships to the business relationships, just life as it goes. So thank you so much for coming on the show. For people that want to learn more about you, your business, or just about you, where should they be directed to?
Look, Jason, thank you very much. If I'm so fortunate to have someone follow up, my full name, James McPartland, and maybe that shows up in the show notes. That's a website, and that will lead to any of the social channels. Anybody who would want to learn more about some of the things we discussed about, it's available on the website, and then again, led to some of the popular apps that people follow. I'd be thrilled if anybody followed up here. And look, man, I will also leave you with one of the great gifts you give to people. And I say to folks all the time, sometimes it's more important to stay with the question than have an answer. I imagine people who tune in to you while they're looking for answers, maybe we've addressed something they hadn't been thinking about and something popped for them. And so the service you provide and the gift you give to others by providing perspective, it's not so much here's what you need to do, is consider the following. Practice this if it works, stay with it. If not, discard it, but there's more to come. So you give great gifts, my friend, and thank you for the gift of spending time together. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Mac. I appreciate it and couldn't agree more, is that we want people to live 100 here by going out there to find the best version of themselves. And that's trial by fire, right? Trial by error, trial by effort, trial by going out there to understand what's possible instead of sitting within the uncomfortable that you don't want, and then assuming that's the better than the risk you take on trying something new. Mac, appreciating you. Thank you so much. Live 100. That's what we have for today. Let's do this.